Bias tape is a fab way to get a professional finish on necklines and armholes. In this tutorial, we'll guide you through the steps to sew and press a continuous length of bias from a fabric square. To start, you'll want to cut a square of fabric. Ensure that one edge of the square is parallel to the selvage edge. Since the selvage edge frequently contains manufacturing details printed on it, make sure that the part with the printed details is not included in the dimensions of the fabric square. To achieve a perfect square, fold your fabric diagonally, then confirm that the two perpendicular edges of the square are equal. If you're aiming for a specific length for your bias square, these edges should meet that dimension. Here we are aligning both edges to 27 centimeters. After marking and measuring the sides, use a rotary cutter and ruler to cut the square for precise straight edges. Unfold your square, then cut it diagonally, creating two triangle pieces. Flip the top triangle over vertically to line up the top edge with the bottom edge of the second triangle, making sure that right sides are together. At each side of the bottom edge, you'll notice a 0.6 centimeter or 1/4 inch overhang that forms a small triangle shape. Secure the bottom edge with pins. Reduce your stitch length to 1.0, then sew along the pinned edge using a 0.6 or 1/4 inch seam allowance. Next, with the fabric wrong side up, press the seam open. At this point, you will have sewn a shape resembling a parallelogram or a pushed over rectangle. Next, it's time to mark the bias strips. Since these will become the cut lines later, use a regular marker to draw on your fabric. Do not use an iron-off marker as the lines will disappear when we iron the seam later. In this tutorial, we will be marking out a bias strip width of 3.5 centimeters or 1.38 inches, which is great for bias facing necklines with a 0.6 centimeter or 1/4 inch seam allowance, but you can mark out any width you prefer. When working with a 3.5 centimeter bias strip, you can refer to our blog to find the right size to cut out your bias square to get different lengths of bias. Once you have marked out the bias widths evenly up the height of the rectangle, trim off any excess to ensure you have even bias markings all the way up. Align these short diagonal sides to create a tube, ensuring that the drawn marks are lined up. Then offset the lines to leave a triangle tail at both the start and end of the tube. Next, we will pin this seam with right sides together. Our goal is to align the drawn lines so they intersect perfectly when we sew the 0.6 centimeter or 1/4 inch seam. The simplest method to achieve this is to insert a pin into the drawn line on one side, 0.6 centimeters or 1/4 inch down from the raw edge, and ensure that it pierces through the corresponding line on the other side. Pin all the offset lines in this same manner, adding extra pins as necessary. Begin sewing at the first drawn line after the triangle tail, using a 0.6 centimeter or 1/4 inch seam allowance, and end at the last drawn line before the final triangle tail. Finally, press this seam open. Now the magic happens. Cut along the drawn line to create a continuous length of bias. Next, grab your bias tape maker. This one is 1.7 centimeters or 0.67 inches wide. Double the width of your bias tape maker to find the ideal width to cut your bias strips. there is a margin of a few millimeters on either side that will still work. Halving the dimension of the bias tape maker provides you with the width of your single folded bias tape, and halving it again determines the width of a double folded bias tape. Okay, so now let's get to pressing. With wrong sides up, feed your bias tape through the bias tape maker using a pin to push it through initially. Once pulled through, you will notice the tape maker folds the fabric in half. Follow with a hot iron, pressing the tape as it comes out of the bias tape maker. This will give you your single folded bias tape. Now, simply fold the bias tape again and give it a good press to create double folded bias tape. And hey presto, you've created a continuous length of bias tape, the perfect finishing touch for your fashion masterpieces. If you love sewing, we've got something to help you plan out your creations, our awesome and awesomely free PDF sewing planner. Jot down your measurements, hack plans, and supplies for every project, and add your fabric swatches and garment sketches. Use one of our 4 croquis models or sketch on the blank planner pages. It also includes a collection planner for organizing swatches and styling ideas for mini wardrobe collections, and a 12-month sewing calendar. Get all your measurements sorted with our journal and step-by-step video tutorial, which walks you through how to take each measurement. Download your planner for free at madelabel.co/planner so you can get creative and plan out the wardrobe of your dreams.